Hello peeps, I'm a little more energetic today and I felt like making a video that usually I wouldn't make, but I'm feeling myself, so why not just make an honest video about it. Right now, I would like to just quickly start off in this video by saying something that I know people think my content towards WUWA is a lot more critical than some of the other games. However, I want to explain why it is I do this, right? Many think it's because I want to agenda post against WUWA and make it look bad. However, if this was the case, I wouldn't openly admit 99% of the time that I still think it's the greatest mainstream gacha game on the market right now. Otherwise, I'd obviously be hating on it, right? The reason I'm as critical with WUWA as I am is because this is a game I've played since launch, right? Unlike, I'm sure, many people out there, I have been a literal day one in this game, pre-register, everything. By no means am I special for doing that, but let's be honest, WUWA basically exploded during Renesita, so a lot of people who actively play the game, probably more than not, did not actually play the game day one, right? So this is something I actually had a connection with, and it's the game I started my YouTube channel off with. I glazed this game and I criticize it heavily because I want it to be different and not commit these same mistakes that Hoyo did. After all, that was the entire point of why people invested their time and decided to play this game over the rest of the bigger competition, was because it offered something different, something more, without being anywhere near as predatory, which made people want to make this their main game, right? So once again, I do not hate this game. The reason I'm more critical of this game compared to Hoyo games is because I've simply lost hope in Hoyo's games when I haven't exactly yet lost hope in WUWA. Though the current way it's going, it's not too far off to the point where I'll basically just stop talking about my criticisms for this game as often because I will be accustomed to it, right? So today I wanted to rank probably the 3 things that annoy me the most about this game lately, right? This isn't old time. This is straight up just lately, right now. What is it that has annoyed me the most? So I want to start off with a big one. And I feel like I truly do not see people make enough videos on this, as it's quite common to really shit on some other gacha games for doing this, but not do it over here when it's arguably worse, right? So let's talk about kit restrictions, or just restrictions in general. Negative status effects were kind of the beginning of the end, right? That's pretty over dramatic, because it is, but you get what I'm saying. Negative status effects is when this game started taking a 180, and by this I mean most supports, most DPSs were general and their signatures were general. However, now they were starting to sell teams in like bundles, and on top of this, characters didn't seem to really shine all that great outside of the dedicated best in slot teams Kuro had in mind, right? For example, Phoebe can be ran as main DPS, which is cool, though in Whimpering Waste it's not that good unless you have Chikona, right? And you as well have Phoebe as a sub DPS, or actually no, just basically a support in Zanny's team. And in this team, obviously it's Phoebe's best in slot team, and she can't really go outside of this, right? This is my number one problem with negative status effects, is that negative status effect supports of a certain element cannot really benefit any other element or different team of the negative status effect archetype, right? So you basically need to pull a new team for every single mono negative status effect team that they decide to make, and you can't just use a support from another team in a different negative status a team, even if it isn't best in slot. It just feels ass, right? So that's the issue I have with it. However, back then, the excuse I and many people used was it's just negative status effects, right? At the end of the day, when they don't make negative status effect teams, they won't be this restrictive with character kits and the way they work. And so a heavy attacker, a basic attacker, a whatever could still take perfect advantage of general supports, right? However, this illusion has been ruined as of recent. For those who don't know, even though I've talked about it quite a lot now, and I'm sure other people have too, Yuno has 50% heavy damage amp on her outro, which anyone can activate. It's really solid. However, she has another 40% damage amp in her kit that basically only Augusta can activate this. There is no one else that can activate this because you need to build up Blessing of the Wand Light. Blessing of the Wand Light is something that stacks up or ticks up, right? You get one stack every time you gain a shield in Yuno's Full Moon domain, right? Now, the reason this matters is because you need to get 10 fucking stacks of this thing to fully max it out. Each stack is 4% damage amp, and it obviously maxes out at 40%. And Augusta has a talent in her kit where she refreshes her own small ass shield that makes no difference in how she plays every 0.5 seconds, specifically for this Yuno synergy. And so every other character in the game will only be receiving the 50% heavy damage amp from Yuno, while Augusta gets this premium full unlocked kit buff, right? So Yuno is around a 18% increase at S0R0 in a Augusta team, and this is actually competitive with the difference Phoebe makes in a Zanny team and Chacona makes in a Cartethia team compared to the second best in slot options, meaning Kuro has now gotten their grubby little hands their own restrictive kit mechanics that they've been doing for negative status effects, and they have now moved on to doing the exact same shitty practices to characters that aren't even supposed to be restrictive, right? So now Yuno's value outside of an Augusta team is pretty shit, right? Unless you run her main DPS. Main DPS is solid, but I'll get into that in a little bit. Sub DPS and main DPS is basically the only two teams Yuno is good in. Main DPS, she obviously isn't top tier, but she is actually pretty solid. And then her best in slot team will always be with Augusta, as that's the highest damage output one, right? And the issue I take with this is any Yuno pullers, if they don't want to run her as main DPS but want to keep her as this like general heavy attack buffer, I'm sorry to say you're probably not going to be using this woman all that well in future limited teams with other heavy attackers, right? Because if she's only 18% better than Mortefi at S0R0 in an Augusta team, imagine in any other heavy attackers team where they don't get the 40% damage amp, right? Now, what this likely leads to is a less than 10% upgrade from grabbing Yuno, and so it's straight up better to go for a signature weapon on the DPS or sequences somewhere else, or just invest in a new team. Just keep using Mortefi. What's the point of even pulling a new limited character if they're less than 10% better than a 4-star you likely have S6 with static mist on them, right? So Yuno's value outside of an Augusta team is just dog shit as a support, and it means she's very easily replaceable in future new heavy attacker DPS's teams, and Wuwa or Kuro, they did this shit on purpose, obviously. As of recent, they've been wanting to sell teams in bundles as much as they can. They want to restrict characters so that they're good short-term in their short-term best-in-slot teams, but going into the future, this allows them to be very easily replaced since half of their kits don't even work effectively without a DPS that can activate half of their buffs, right? So the unfortunate reality is that likely will not age well if you only care about her being a heavy attack support. And this is a problem I have with this game. In version 1, all the DPSs were general, right? Signature weapon jumps weren't as big. Signature weapons were also general, right? Blah, 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 blah. There's so much in version 1 that can just be used on future or other characters. But they completely took a 180 in version 2 since negative status effects, and now that they're trying to go all the way, even outside of negative status effects, adding these restrictions that make certain supports best in slots and makes them not so good for future value, it's really bad. Right? Like, why are you going out of your way to ruin the general value of characters so badly? And I know why they're doing it, right? It's obviously because they make way more fucking money off of selling bundle teams than someone using SK for the 20th time. But it's like, come on, right? So that's my thoughts on the number one issue I have with WUA as of current. It's easily how hard they're trying to push restrictive kits to make sure characters don't go beyond their value in the future, and that they're only best in slot for 1 or 2 teams, so Kuro can keep them in check and keep selling newer supports and newer other, characters, right? The second thing that I take an issue with in this game has to be obviously the signature jumps. Now, a lot of people don't understand why it is I take such an issue with WUA's signature jumps, right? And I want to try and explain it as best as I can here. Yes, it's true. WUA's signature jumps are on the same level of HSR, so technically I shouldn't complain about it, is what a lot of people say, even though I already complain about the Lycone situation in HSR quite commonly. Here's the thing. HSR is 1 year older than WUA. If we were to compare the time period, right, and go to version 2, which is where HSR would currently take place in WUA's lifespan, we did not have 40% jumps and signatures yet. Most characters had 25 to 30%, right? It wasn't until we got into version 3 where we actually started getting this big of jumps. The first case was my day, and the worst case is Cassie with around a 40-something% jump, right? So let's get that out of the way. WUA is 1 year younger, but has already caught up to HSR's Lycone jumps. However, there is another issue with this game, being the fact that their 4 stars are complete and utter dog shit, right? The reason this matters is that they're likely not going to upgrade the standard banner weapons. They very clearly don't give a shit about really updating 4-star weapons unless it's Battle Pass, which, by the way, R5 of the new Battle Pass weapon, I'm pretty sure, is weaker than Lustrous Razor for Augusta. So even if you get 5 Battle Passes after multiple patches, it's still better to just use the standard weapon than use the fucking Battle Pass weapon, right? So 4-star jumps in this game are more comparable to 50 to 60% jumps to current character signatures, right? That is absolutely fucking disgusting. And if you don't get how bad it is yet, let me put it this way for you. In version 1, almost all DPS characters did not hit the 20% signature jump compared to standard weapon. Why does this matter, Gabby? Well, Prolova's difference, right, between her signature weapon and String Master. Not the standard. Compared to another limited weapon being String Master, the jump from String Master to Prolova's signature weapon is the same as version 1 DPS's signature jump from standard to limited signature. And that's limited versus limited. And that is the best limited weapon in the entirety of the game for its general use. This is an issue that is much, much worse than people want to let on. People really like sugarcoating it because this game's, weapon banner is guaranteed. And although that is 100% an advantage it has compared to some of these other Hoyo games, it's not going to be an advantage anymore if signatures keep increasing. And let's all be honest, by version 3, we will probably see a 50% signature weapon jump somewhere in version 3, right? And I heard in PGR, this has already happened. The whole mono teams, the whole kit restrictiveness, weapons giving insane jumps compared to other options. I've heard they already did this in PGR, so this isn't anything new. They are applying what they did in another game to their newer one, but the rates in WUWA are way fucking worse compared to PGRs, right? So the signature weapon problem is much, much worse than people like to let on. It is much worse, right? So those are the two biggest issues I currently have with WUWA, right? So let's talk about the third and last one that, although isn't as big of a deal to me, it's 100% something that should be noted, right? So this issue is with banner placement. Now, I don't have as much of an issue if it's character reruns, right? Like Zanny Phoebe, let's all be honest, that shit was scummy, right? But at the end of the day, Phoebe was technically a rerun, so it's semi-understandable. But two new limited units who are best in slot for each other running back-to-back banners is really fucking annoying, right? Augusta and Yuno and Cartethia Chacona, I believe, are the two instances of this as of late. Cartethia Chacona were back-to-back banners, with Cartethia being the beginning of 2.4 and Chacona being the end of 2.3. And Augusta and Yuno, as you can see and has been officially announced, they are best in slot for each other, and they're literally in this 2.6 patch back-to-back, right? And I really just don't like this, right? I really don't like this in the slightest, because at least in HSR, right, the rates are worse. Average pulls per patch is about the same to WUWA, but the rates are 100% worse in HSR. But they at least give you the little bit of decency where if new characters are getting like a new limited best in slot teammate, at minimum, it will be one entire patch after the character's release, right? For example, Phanon is the first phase of 3.4, with Ceridra being the second phase of 3.5. So this is actually more than a patch's time difference between banners. After this, he's getting Dan Heng as the best in slot sustain. Though Dan Heng shouldn't be pullable, you get the point. Dan Heng is the second phase of 3.6, and Dan Heng is free, right? Dan Heng is straight up free. You can go for his Eidolons, but he should be free according to current leaks. You as well have Casterus. Casterus released in 3.2. She didn't get Hyacine until second phase 3.3. After this, she's getting March all the way up in, I believe, 3.6 first phase, and Cyrene should be 3.7 first phase, also best in slot. As you can see, even the worst of the worst, you know, patch differences between limited supports and HSR, there's a one patch difference. They aren't running, you know, Phanon plus Ceridra on the same patch. They aren't running Castris plus Hyacine on the exact same patch. Wuwa has been taking advantage of players and making them miss out on character banners so that they experience FOMO and are more likely to drop money. As, let's be honest, yes, you can just wait till a rerun, but a rerun is going to take 4.5 months to 6 months most of the time, right? So most people don't want to wait that long of a time period before they can take full advantage of their team, and they'll feel more pressured in their head to drop money for this shit. Because why would you wait half a month when, you know, you could use a day's worth of money, right, from work or whatever? I'm assuming you're working like a 9 to 5 or whatever the fuck, and this will allow you to not have to wait, you know, 6 months before getting, you know, right? This is really fucking scummy, and it isn't talked about enough just how shit this game's banner placements are, right? So those are my 3 most annoying issues with Wuwa as of current. We have them going out of their way to make kits as restrictive as possible so characters can't age well or be all that versatile. We have the signature weapon jumps being much worse than people lead on when talking about it, and it just isn't talked about enough, right? And then you also have the quite shitty banner placements as of recent, where they're consistently selling teams or best in slot teammates in the exact same patch that are completely new and not just reruns, right? We'll find out soon whether or not Galbraina and QU1 are best in slot for each other, or if QU1 truly is best in slot for Augusta. Who knows, right? But if QU1 and Galbraina end up being best in slot for each other, which, by the way, there's actually a decent chance because they're both echo skill damage dealers, then I'm gonna be fucking pissed, right? Love you all. Hope you have a great day. Let me know down in your comments your 3, you know, most, you know, biggest issues you have with Wuwa, basically, right? Or you could also drop your 3 favorite things about Wuwa as of currently compared to the rest of the gacha space. Why not spread a little bit of positivity if you've made it this far into the video? After all, this isn't a video meant to attack Wuwa. This is a video meant to criticize some issues I personally have with it, even if others may not agree. Love you all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. Peace out.